Thanks. All right, so was everybody in my talk like an hour ago or whatever? Raise your hand. Oh, you make me explain everything from this bottom. All right. Okay, so today we're going to go over the squat, which I consider one of the most primal and most important exercises you could possibly do in your weight room with clients. Explained all that in my talk. There's a couple of key differences in learning how to squat with world-class technique. And the reason I say that there is a certain technique that most of us have in the world class is because it's very, very true. I just did a seminar with Ed Cohen. If you guys are all into lifting, you should know who that is and look him up. Dealt with the 900 at 220, still the world record. 1030 squat at 242, 585 bench. I mean, the dude's considered by many to be the all-time greatest lifter to ever live. And me and him had a long conversation on how to squat properly, and both him and I and a lot of other professionals in the field that's actually done big agree. So this is not something that's just my personal opinion. This is something that I've built on not only myself breaking multiple world records in the squat, but training with people that, if you were to add up all of my training partners and myself, we probably broke up to 25 to 30 world records in the squat. So there is something to this, and I think it has a very usable information for regardless of what population, whether it be pro football down to the junior high kid just first starting to lift. The biggest problem I see with teaching people how to squat is they already think they know how to squat and they've already done 1,000 reps completely the wrong way. Every person that I have in my gym that I've coached from scratch looks like a machine is squatting. And every person that I've had to fix because they even had upwards of less than 6 months of training is a total pain in the ass. So if you've been doing things wrong, we're going to have some big problems today. And it's not going to be fixed in 50 minutes, let me tell you that. But if you have been squatting fairly regular, how many of you guys have seen Think You Can Squat series that I did on Elite FTS 5 years ago? Okay, homework number one, when you leave this seminar, get your butt on there and watch that. The biggest question I had when I first did that is when I was squatted 1,200 in gear. Does that work for raw? So what I did was I took all the gear off and broke the world record raw. So what you're going to see in that video is a lot of what you're going to go over today, but you're going to be able to recheck it. It's got, I think, 250,000 hits, maybe more. Point being is that position and the way I teach how to squat works for raw, equipped, athletes, non-athletes, et cetera, et cetera. So no ifs, ands, or buts on that, okay? And the way you see that train in those videos is exactly how everybody trains at my gym and people that do my online coaching and all those things. Point being is that if you want to squat big weights and do it for 25, 30, 40 years, you're going to have to do it the right way or you're not going to do it very long, okay? The first position to learn is that or understanding of squatting to learn is that you have to treat the squat as a hip dominant exercise, okay? Now, we all know that it builds legs, but if you attack squats as a predominant leg builder, you're already going to have a form problem. Okay? Now, how do you do that? Well, the first thing is that you have to not let the knee overpower the entire movement by letting the knee come forward over the knee or come over the toe, and you got to keep lateral pressure out on the knee, i.e. trying to break your legs in half, pushing them out. If you do that, your squat will be almost 60 to 70% perfect. So the other 30% is maintaining a strong back position. The rest of it is learning to push out. So in your notes, write in parentheses, push out. If you learn to do that, you're going to squat really well. If you think squatting is an up and down exercise, which it appears to be, you're already in deep trouble. Does that make sense? Why? Because the body likes to bend at the knee. It wants to bend at the knee. The key is you only let it bend at the knee as much as the hip can maintain through the movement. Does that make sense? So if I just bend and let my knees do what they want to do, they're going to go way forward and it's going to be all shear force at the knee. Okay? That's step one. So once you figure that out, that starts in the foot pressure. So there's two ways that I like to use to teach the squat. You can either start from the foot up or the head down. So today we're going to teach from the foot up. So if we know that the squat has to be an outward pressure, so if I'm on this carpet, the first thing I'm trying to do when I'm squatting, once I get my body set to squat, I'm trying to tear that carpet in half. That's the pressure the whole time. So when I'm standing here, that carpet's trying to be torn that way. The whole freaking time. If you don't do that, your knee is not going to be stable. See, if I lock it out, that knee can't go anywhere but out and down. Does that make sense? So if I don't stay pushing out the entire time, I'm in deep trouble. Okay? The only way you're going to know that is if you hit extremely heavy weights. If I just tried to just let my body do what it wanted to do, I would have broke my legs 3 times by now. You have to force it to be in the right position. We good with that? It's a forced position. It's not a comfortable position. Point being is, I've never had an ACL problem, never hurt my knee, never hurt my hips, never hurt my back. Why? I maintain lateral pressure constantly throughout the entire squat. Okay? The guy that can train the longest is the one that gets the strongest. Does it mean that I don't use Olympic-style squats on a heel? Does it mean that I don't let my knees come forward occasionally to train my legs? Yes, I do that. Well, I'm talking 1 week out of 6 just to build leg strength, okay? The rest of the time, I'm trying to make my hip and my hamstring balance out from my quadricep. Point being is, anytime I go back to an Olympic-style squat, I can squat a house if I want to that way too. The point is, with your training, is you want to take a stone and hit as many birds as possible. Not 1 bird for 1 stone. You want to hit 5 birds with 1 stone. So all the guys that I know that can push out really hard and squat perfectly with a straight angle shank, which means keeping your foot this way, so this stays perpendicular, can squat a house in an Olympic style as well, but not the other way around. So with that being said, my whole philosophy on training is that make sure that you're training your weakest position, which with most of you is going to be a straight angle shank for a while. Once you learn how to do that and master it, you can go let your knees come forward occasionally if you want to and squat that way. Does that make sense? So initially when the Bulgarians were the big cheese in lifting, they taught straight angle cleans and straight angle snatches of the shin. Why? It loaded the hip more. Way hard to do. But then once they let them come forward, they had so much more stability and strength. This was in the 50s and early 60s. So if you look at a lot of the old Bulgarian tapes, if you can find them and watch them, they're doing everything straight angle shank to load the hip. And then they let the quad dominate after that once it created balance. Does that make sense? It's just a little history. Point being is you want to try to work on that straight angle as much as possible. The way to do that is to push out. The next thing is the butt has to lead the movement. Okay? So you write that down. That's the next step. So when I get ready to squat, I'm pushing my feet apart and I'm letting my butt lead the movement. Now you notice that when I'm not doing this and falling forward, I'm keeping my chest in the same position, but my butt's reaching back. Okay? What is that going to do? 1, it's going to keep the quad from overpowering the entire movement. 2, it's going to force my hamstrings and glutes to activate at the optimal range to create maximal strength. 3, when I sit in the hole and want to come out, my hamstrings are going to be stretched, and the stretch reflex is going to be berserk. Pop out of the hole, boom, hard, fast, strong. The next thing it's going to do is it's going to keep me in a good position all the way up and not let me come forward or dip or let my knee come in. Okay? So as you notice, like all this stuff is becoming important because you have to stay in position. Does anybody know what the hardest thing is to lifting 3 times body weight in a squat? Anybody can do that? What's the hardest part about doing any kind of heavy squat? Right. Can you hold it? Okay, I'm here to tell you that my legs don't need to be any stronger to squat 30, 40 more pounds than I can right now. Can my core and my upper back hold that weight and keep me in position? Guess what? That's the same problem with your athletes and your clients. Because the legs don't grow as fast as the spine. When you got those, vertical spine muscles, your spinal erectors, those things are encased in bone, have very little to no blood flow, and they're small. Now, you tell me, and they're long. So which one's going to grow faster, the quadricep and leg or the lower back or the mid back? The quad's going to grow faster, right? It's got more vessels. It bleeds easy, right? It's got a lot of blood flow. So the point being is when you train legs, you got to be very careful that the back gets just as strong as the legs at the same time. But most of our high school kids and developing athletes, what do they want to do? Leg presses, leg extensions, all that jazz, right? Problem is what their hamstrings and glutes can fire with, and it's what their back can hold. So if I were to reset it and do it all over again as a child, I would do tons of back extensions, tons of reverse hypers, tons of oblique and transverse abdominis work, massive amounts of hamstrings, which I already do now. Point being is that would have made me progress much, much faster. I just learned quick enough I'm talking much faster, is I learned how to train when I was 19. So I had only done things wrong for a few years, and I was kind of built to lift anyway, so I didn't really have poor technique, but I had world-class technique by the time I was 21, 22, and I was still a little late. So I probably would be stronger than I am now if I would have known that the lower back and hamstrings and glutes were predominantly the limitation to my ability to get strong. So what does that mean? That means that to be great at the squats, you got to make sure that most of your training, and in pretty much any athletic endeavor, probably half to 65% of your training, lower body needs to be glute, hamstring, and low back dominant. I don't care what sport you play. I don't care what you do. I don't care if you don't do anything other than just recreationally train. Hamstrings, glutes, low back need to be the predominant trained and warmed up muscle group before and after squatting and or leg day. That's another huge tip for you guys to take home and use. Any questions on that before we get started? So we got foot pressure is always out. We got the shin tries to stay straight and the butt leads. The next thing is, and it's a very debatable topic because everybody's a freaking expert at it, is what do you do with your chest and your head? You keep it up. Okay, you go watch old videos of Ed Cohen or Kurt Kowalski or me or Larry Pacifico, Bill Kazmaier. Do you see them dipping their chest and keeping their head down? No, they're keeping it high. Do you see any of us have neck problems or cervical spine problems? No, so that's thrown out the window, okay? So you want your head at bare minimum neutral, if not a little bit looking high. So if I were going to try to squat 900 right here with this bar that I wouldn't put 500 on, then I would have my head looking right above the doors, the exit sign. You see where the black meets the silver? So there's that line. That's where my head would be. So it's semi up and neutral in the beginning, but then as I'm going down, I have to look up a little higher to keep seeing it. See my body position? Boom. That's how you do it. More simply said than done, but that's how it happens. Any questions? Well, I think we just need to throw a bunch of people on here and just break you off something. You know, but the real trick, how many of you guys are dressed to work out and you guys want to max and see where you're at? I don't see any hands. Yeah, dude. What's up with you guys? Everybody scared? It's not fun to max in front of 1,000 people when they're standing out and all the lights are on you. But point being is, how do you really know where your weaknesses are unless you max? You don't. I can come up here and show you with the bar, and yeah, I learned a lot training with that bar. As soon as I put close to your max on, it turns into all instinct. That's the problem with squats or anything like that. You guys are going to turn into deer in headlights, and you're going to do it however your body wants to do it versus how I tell you to do it. But here's the point. When you squat to that constantly, close to max or at max, it's not only a tool to get stronger, right? That's pretty simple to understand. It's also an assessment tool. If you go to max and you do it as hard as you can do it, you are going to do everything you can to put it in your strongest muscles and avoid your weakest muscles. Guess what that guides you to? What you should be doing for warm-up and what you should be doing for accessories. So how many of you guys warm up your weaknesses before you do your big lift, and then you smash your weaknesses right after your big lift? Anybody? You guys just earned the amount of money you spent at this seminar right there. That's where you guys are all screwed up. You're not warming up your weaknesses before you lift. It's not a generalized warm-up. It's a specific warm-up to attack your personal and or your clients or your athletes' personal weaknesses. Step one. Step two, pick an exercise that's going to break them off something and show you to make sure that those muscle groups are not working correctly and make them stronger. Step three, once those muscle groups have been addressed, 4 to 6 exercises starting with the most important down to the least important to fix those muscle groups and make them better. Guess what's going to happen? Technique on everything is going to increase. Why? You're fixing structural and biomechanical weaknesses. That's simple. So if you think you can take a cookie cutter program or you can write something on the board that's going to work for everybody and fix everybody, you're dead wrong, and you probably don't need to be a coach. Sorry, but that's the way it is. So if you want to squat big weights, that's how you do it. If you want to make your clients better and teach them to be more structurally sound and be able to lift heavier and harder all year round for many, many, many years, that's how you do it. I don't mean to go on a rant, but that's just the way it is. Okay? So I want every one of you to change that. You know, whether you were too embarrassed to raise your hand or you actually don't work out that way, that's the way it is. I train all my firemen, all my military, all my special forces guys, all my powerlifters, all that way, and they're all strong. Why? We're fixing weaknesses constantly. Max effort works great. It works, makes you strong. That's simple. But nobody uses that as an assessment tool. You have to max in order to see what is going on. You know? It's like if I put you on a car and tell you to race it around a track, but you only go 20 miles an hour, are we going to see really where you're weak? You may not be a good turner. You may not be a good shifter. You may not have enough horsepower, whatever. But we can't find out unless we push to the limit, right? And everybody thinks, well, isn't that dangerous? No. Doing stuff with reps until you want to puke is dangerous because your form sucks. If your form sucks only one time, it's not a big deal. If your form sucks 20 times, it's a huge deal. That's how you get hurt. Maxing is not dangerous, okay? Because most of you aren't even strong enough to hurt yourself. Because if I got 62 to 70-year-old women that can max every week, and they don't get hurt, and they just keep getting stronger, and their bone density is twice that of what everybody else is their age, is it dangerous? If it was dangerous, I would be sued, and I would be in jail 10 years ago. So it's not dangerous. Any questions? Yeah. Yeah. Good. Yeah. Yep. Yep. Good. Yeah, it's a good question. So some things I overlooked because I want you to have the big three down. Push your feet out, keep your shins straight, and keep your butt leading. If you do all those things, you're perfect. Putting your feet in an optimal position is after that point. So I want to make sure everybody gets that fixed. If you're asking me where the optimal foot position is, it has to do with femoral length. So your femur length. If your femur is short, you can withstand a better position a little bit narrow. If your femur is long, you have to go out a little wider. Is that fair? So point being is, I got a guy that's 6'6", weighs 190 pounds, squats 455. It's not an insane amount of weight, but it's a lot for his build. He is not built to lift. His shins are absolutely perfect, and his feet is about 6 feet apart. Why? Because his legs are that long, so he has to be that wide in order to maintain that position. Still below parallel, so he has to be very flexible. Point being is, I don't squat that wide, but his positioning needs to be that wide in order to be in his best position. There is no magic position, okay? The farther you turn your toes out in a squat, the more quadricep it's going to allow you to use. The farther you turn your toes straighter, the more IT band and glute medius you're going to have to use. And that's based on my own opinion and my own thought pattern of what I've seen for 20 years. Whatever the data says, I don't know, but that's what I think works. So I tend to keep my feet a little bit straighter to load that IT band and glute medius and keep my quadricep from trying to overpower the movement because my legs are so strong. But I have to make sure the glutes are doing their fair share or my quads will try to take over. That was back in the day, but you know what I mean? So my feet are a little bit more straight, but depending on where your strengths and weaknesses are and your flexibility ranges, depends on where your feet are. The next thing is you want to try to make sure that most of your foot pressure is right on the heel to the outside of the foot, midfoot. You don't want any pressure on the toe. Once the pressure goes to the toe, i.e. an Olympic shoe, you've already caused it to be more quad dominant. So do not squat in heeled shoes, especially when you're first learning. Do I use heel shoes occasionally to train and change the way I train? Yes. But I know how to squat without them very, very well. So use a Chuck Taylor. I think Reebok makes a flat-soled shoe. Anything flat-soled. You want to be completely flat-soled and learn to squat that way. And if you decide heels are your thing, great. But be good at squatting flat-soled. Because your feet are not built with an elevation heel. So it automatically puts you in a position that you're already quad dominant, which is awesome. The reason those shoes were originally developed was for Olympic lifting, to where they could get really deep, only have to pull the weight so far to squat way underneath it and come way forward and catch. Okay? That's not a back squat. Right? So there are very few guys at the top level that use any type of a heel. All right? The reason is it shifts it a little bit more to the quad and it's a little bit less in the hip. And like I just told you, you want to try to make it as hip dominant as possible. The other thing is don't have $150 shoes with a $5 squat. Okay? Go buy a $25 pair of Chucks and get good at squatting. And if you want to buy a $150 pair of Nike or whatever the cool Olympic shoe is, go for it. But get good at flat sole the way your foot was intended to be built first, just for structural balance. All right, so how many people do we have here that want to squat? You guys come on up. Anybody wants to squat? And like I said, you know, if you came to my gym and I'm going to do an assessment on you, I'm going to charge you $250 for an hour for me to assess your squat. So you're getting this for free today. I would highly recommend that you come in and you learn this, because when you message me about it, you're going to come to my gym and pay me $250. So I would match your squat bar height with these different, yeah. That one would probably be your shortest bet. Now we're going to do this in group setting, so I'll call you guys. We'll do one, all three of you walk out at the same time, and we're going to do like 8-10 reps so I can dial in each of your form and walk around and get some. Let them put it where it wants. All I care about is they're trying to maintain vertical shank. The reason that this squat style is not readily accepted to the natural or the normal public is because it's really hard to do. It's not natural. It's not, but the natural style squat becomes so much easier once you're balanced. That makes sense? So like I said, it's always based on what you're not good at. So you guys go ahead and crawl under the bar, one of you at each rack. Step it out, and I want you to have your body ready to squat, but don't do anything yet. Okay, get your feet set. Now the first thing is you want to look slightly upward, so if you're facing that way, look where the silver meets the black on the wall. Same thing on this side. That's where your eyes stay the entire time. One thing about squatting big weights is learning to be able to listen without seeing, feel without looking. A great gym has no mirrors. I wrote about that in 2006. If you got a mirror to reinforce what you're doing, it's not transferring to jack. You have to be able to feel what you're doing, okay? The next thing I want you guys to do is I want you to feel you trying to spread the carpet in between your legs and cut it apart. Feel that the whole time. That's what it should feel like the entire time you squat. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to lead with the butt 1 inch. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to kick the butt back. Without rolling the chest over, you're going to kick the butt back. That is going to initiate how you start the squat. The next phase is I want you to push out to go down. So push out and go all the way down as far as you can. Okay, so that's pretty decent. Her knee is equal with her toe. Your knee's over your toe. You're perfect. Good job, old school. All right, so stand back up. No pun intended, man. I like it. So what you want to do is if you're not doing this the whole time, my knee's going to want to go this way. Right? That's when you get the, right? No knees left. So when you're squatting, make sure that you're pushing your knees apart so hard that it feels like it wants to tear your crotch. Okay? Yes. Yes. You guys see that? Fixed. Okay? Way better. Now, try to go a little deeper, and remember that your eyes have to stay fixed on the area in which you started at the top and stay there. So it's going to have to crank a little bit as you go up or as you go down. Yeah. Yeah, better. Better. Don't let your chest round over to come up. Keep that up and keep your eyes looking up higher and higher as you go down. There. Fixed. There you go. Give me my money. All right. Racket. Next one. What's that? Yeah. That's pretty quick. Did you see how smooth that looks and the body works? Everything works in synchronicity. Not too much back, not too much leg. Everything works in perfection. You want to lift big weights and do it safely. Spread the pressure out over the entire body. Do not make one muscle group do everything. Yep. Hold on. Well, we don't know if it's a, here's the problem is, so you test with a bar, right? You see the bar we just did? We don't know if that's a weakness. Now, if I put 225 on there and that's close to her max and she does it, that's a weakness. Right now, it's a motor pattern problem. So sometimes we confuse a weakness with a motor pattern issue. She probably has just squatted a little bit on her own and bent that way and not realized that she had. We have to reinforce a good motor pattern. So I don't know if it's a weak spot, central nervous system wise, or it's actual muscle issue until it goes heavy enough. That's why I was such a stickler in the beginning on, we're going to teach you guys some technique to show you how to do it right, but to really see the weakness, you got to go heavy enough to, it's actually breaking form because the weight's heavy enough and you're doing it instinctively. I can teach a monkey how to squat with this bar perfect, but when that's close to max, it's like, I'm going to do it any way I can. I'm not listening anymore. You know what I mean? So, okay, next group. Walk it out and get it set to squat. Good. Now, you want to set your feet wherever you like, okay? You want to dig your heels and the back part of your foot into that carpet so hard you want to try to tear the carpet. You want to initiate the motion by sitting 1 inch back with your butt, and then you want to push out as hard as you can to go down. So you guys see there how she wants to be knee down, how the knee wants to take over everything? See how the knee's coming way forward? So stand back up. Now remember, that shin's got to stay straight, so the only way you can do that is push out even harder, 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 harder. That's better. And sometimes when you guys do this, you're going to have to grab people and do it manually. So for her, she's got really long femurs. So if we widen her stance up about an inch, now remember, you're trying to split that apart the whole time and keep your head up real high. Keep it, push out, harder, harder, harder. There, see? Now her knee's just kind of even. Now sometimes with athletes, go ahead and stand. Sometimes with athletes that are built like her, that's all you're going to get. You're never going to get a perfectly straight angle. It's going to be very difficult. Now, she comes and lifts with me for a year, I can probably fix that. But right off the rip, it already looks 50% better. So do 5, 6 reps. Let me watch you. Yep, yep. Don't let it come forward. Keep pushing it back. Better. Good. And if it feels a little imbalanced, that's because you don't have the muscles in that area to do that. You need to build them up. Yeah, that's pretty good right there. You guys see that? Yep. Perfect. You got to push out so hard it feels like it's going to break something. And trust me, it won't. Yeah, better. Feel different? Those are the muscles you want to use. Pretty good. You're probably going to need a little more upper back, and you need to keep your butt behind you. So he's got really strong legs, but if you see him from the side, right when he loads his spine, his butt's flat. It's not stuck out like this, it's like this, which is automatically going to make you not real stable. The butt's always got to be behind the bar. That creates a stability factor. Okay, go ahead and rack it. Okay, next group. Remember, walk it out, get it set where you want it. Don't squat yet, so I can see everybody. So remember, we're going to start. We're going to get our feet dug in. And the other thing, too, is remember, even in practice, so we look here. And this is more for competition, but you see the distance here? That's about 180% more energy wasted if that was big weights that he'd have to walk out. So with the proper walkout, sorry to make you stand there, but pick, step, step, wide. Watch all the best lifters in the world. That's what they do. Why? Efficiency, okay? We're not going to take a farmer's walk with the weight. We're just going to get it far enough to where our feet have enough room. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure most of our weight is on the heel. The next step is we're going to try to break the sides of our shoes off, and we're going to try to tear the carpet. The next step is we're going to sit our butt back and make it behind the bar. And then we're going to lead by pushing out so hard it feels like it's going to tear our IT bands off. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, pretty good. Yeah, not bad. That's tolerable. That's pretty good for just starting off 1 rep. You guys do like 6. The depth will come with 1, more weight, and 2, learning this position. So yeah, you can get a little deeper with a grass Olympic squat, but over time this will get deeper. Yeah, that looks really good right there. Good. Just have your head up a little higher. Pinch here. Yeah, there you go. Bam. Good. That's good. Rack. Yo. Tilt under, like it's called a butt wink. The butt wink, in my opinion, comes from tight and unusable hamstrings. So the hamstring's pulling on it. You're not pushing into the hamstring, so it turns the back. That's my theory on it. So usually people with very weak hamstrings that have no rip out of the hole, they're going to push it towards their quad in order to get the rebound off the kneecap versus get the rebound out of the hamstring. So if you see somebody's butt turning under them, it's because their hamstrings aren't activating correctly. Most of the time. Okay, we're going to walk out. We're going to push our feet through the heels. We're going to try to tear the carpet. We're going to push our butt back 1 inch behind the bar, and then we're going to push our feet apart as hard as we can by keeping our eyes high and looking higher and higher as we rise, as we go down. Go ahead. Yeah, not too bad. Good. You see how tight this dude's hips are? Your hips are tighter than a banjo string, dog. You shouldn't be tighter than me. I'm 3 bills. Right. So go wider. So he's got really long femurs too. So his stance eventually is going to have to be a lot wider than he's comfortable with. So now turn your toes out just a hair. Now what I want you to do is lead with the butt and push those knees out so hard like it hurts. That's a little better. That way. See how tight those hips are? So I could tell you right now that he will have or has had back problems because his hips are so tight that his spine doesn't work correctly. Go ahead, do again. Yeah, it's getting better. Just bust out like 6 reps, keep stretching it. So he's about 1.5 inches, 2 inches below or above parallel. As he works that, it'll get deeper and deeper. Good, yeah, that's getting there. Good, where's your head? I always have a saying for that, but I can't say it here. No, I can't whisper it. All right, looks pretty good. Yeah, that with your head up, that looks way better. Push your knees out a little harder. Yeah, there, good. Once your head drops, it's going to put it over your knee. So I'm sure you guys have all seen people squat with your head down, blah, 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 whatever. It already puts it over into a leg press and push it through your knee. I'm telling you right now, put huge weights on your back. That ain't happening. You got to keep that chest up as high as possible. Now, I train with my chin down occasionally to put more pressure on my upper back to actually make me round over. So then when I'm straight up, I stay that way. But I'm talking like once every 10 weeks. So keep your head up. That looks a lot better. Yep, let me see you, dude. Go for it. Yeah, there you go. And see, he's a pretty tall guy. He's not having a whole lot of problem doing it. Now, we put some weights on there. Maybe we'll find out. But okay, rack it. Good. Any questions on that? Yeah. Yeah. No, not toes, heels. Heels. Outside of the shoe, like I tried to squat one time and sandals just blew the sides of them off. Yeah, yep. That's why it's important to squat. Imagine trying to do that in a heel. It's going to turn the shoe. So that's why I always get in talks with people that have heeled shoes. How do you push out in a heeled shoe? It wants to flop over. If something's flat, like a chuck, you can draw into it and that shoe won't roll. It'll stay flat on the ground because it has some give on the sides. If you're squatting correctly, that's how you should do it. Good. Head, eyes. Remember, if you're pay very close attention when coaching, because the thing of it is that you will go back to what your natural abilities are. So if I tell you, spend 5 minutes to tell you where to put your eyes, don't change that. Keep your eyes exactly where it is, because eyes down, go down. Yeah. Yeah, better. Pretty good. Just hips are a little tight. Just keep sitting back farther. You're good. Hey, look all right. Yeah, it's not bad, actually. There you go. Just draw your knees apart so hard. Yeah. Keep drawing them, keep drawing them, keep drawing them. Yeah, that's good. It's better. Just a little deeper. Takes practice. Your hip flexors are on fire. Right one. Sometimes you'll have a one side muscle go crazy. You might have a small leg length discrepancy that hasn't been addressed yet. So if you put her in a machine that measures her femoral or shank lengths, you might have a 1/2 inch or maybe not that much, maybe a couple millimeters off. That's what mine was. So a lot of people don't know this, but when I was 6 years old, I got hit by a car on my bicycle going 50 miles an hour. I went through the windshield and broke both my legs. I was in a wheelchair for a year. So you realize when people tell me their knees hurt, I don't want to listen to it because I don't care. But my point is what happened was, so I got hit on this side. So from the knee down, both my femurs were broke. I broke my pelvis, snapped this leg in 3 places, and this one in 6. They almost had to cut it off. That's why you get these pinholes, okay? When that happened, my shank, so from my knee to my ankle, is 9 millimeters shorter than my left leg from that knee down. So my pelvis was tilted. Well, by the time I was American world-class level lifter, okay, I started getting back issues. Like my back was always feeling like it was hurt and a little out. I'm like, well, about the end of my career, right? Well, my mom is a nurse practitioner. She knows a lot of orthopedic surgeons. She's like, well, let's look at, you guys can rack it if you want. You guys, let's take a look at his bone lengths and see if maybe being in those casts had some problems. Well, they did a full bone scan on me, and my tibia and fibia was 9 millimeters shorter. So they put, my lifting shoe has a 9 millimeter flat build on the bottom inside the shoe. Pelvis is perfect, everything's right. Point being is if you feel something on one side more than the other, chances are you could have a leg length discrepancy, which a lot of people do have, but they never train hard enough to find out. How many guys do you have in the pros that have a little bit of a discrepancy? Plenty. That's pros, so they're making pro teams and they have a little bit of a discrepancy. So all of us have, most times, a little bit of a discrepancy in length. So if you're getting a lot of pain, I would have that checked out and have the test done, because if it could be as easy as putting an orthotic in and having that fixed. Makes sense? Does anybody, we kind of showed the form, and I don't want to run that into the ground. Yeah, go ahead. Okay, yeah. Bar position, high or low, if you're talking max training, depends on torso length, and comfort, where you like it. I don't carry the bar super low, but I have an insanely strong back. Now, if I could learn to carry the bar a half an inch lower, I'd probably be 50, 80 pounds stronger. I just don't like it. I don't like the feel of it. But on the converse side, a high bar squat is going to allow you to build a little bit more upper back musculature, and it's also going to help you build a little bit more leg in an Olympic style or even a powerlifting style squat. Problem is, it tends to be a little bit harder on your neck, and if you're doing max effort work like that, it's already pulling you down. So what I like to say is, and a general rule of thumb, is to have the bar right below the trap and right above the rear delt. And then build your rear delts up to where you have a shelf. So I set the bar on my rear delt, and that bar can't move because it's a big hunk of muscle that comes out and just sits there. So tons of rear delt pulls, probably do 200 to 400 rear delt pulls a week to build that rear delt up. So when that bar not only protects me in the bench press, but when that bar sits there, it's got a hunk of muscle to sit on. There's nowhere it can roll. And it's good for my posture. Good answer? Question? Did that answer it? Okay. Let's pick a few people that want to get smashed. Because this is boring. You want to get current? Okay. All right, now listen, I only want to do maybe 6, so we work in a small group. I'll have you guys spot. All right, I want you guys to slowly work up to something pretty heavy, and then you guys know how to squat, right? Like you saw it. Now you're going to see how impossible it becomes once the weights get heavy enough. That's why it becomes important to do repetition after repetition and build up that motor pattern to where your body only understands perfection. That's why you guys, in my talk earlier, you notice I said you squat to max and you squat for speed, but you don't do it till fatigue. Why? Because if you do sets of 10 and 15, you're degrading form, right? So, yeah, that's pretty good. You're gonna need to widen up your stance a little bit because you got really long femurs too. Keep your chest up, and then you're gonna try to sit your butt back to that projector. Sit it back, way back, push out, way better. There, that's better already, good. So 2 people in this rack, 2 people in that rack, and 2 people in that rack that want to go up to fail. And then I'll show you what happens, and we'll talk about where those weaknesses lie and what I would do for warm-ups for them and what I would do for accessory work for them. If you've already done the bar, just put a plate on there if you're a guy, if you're a girl, whatever, quarter, plate, whatever.
In regards to the hip flexors, what do you think about intermittent like stretching of it, like in between sets while you're squatting?
Okay. She asked about if she's got a hip issue, is it important to stretch in between sets? My answer to that would be no. You want to try to get it as mobile as possible with dynamic mobility, not stretching, before you squat, and then figure out what muscle group is causing the problem and train it, but not stretch it. That would actually decrease the amount of power that you can put out in your squat, and it would probably help increase the injury process, in my opinion. So that makes...
I had somebody tell me that I should stretch
Yeah.
in between, and I was just
So
curious
if somebody asks you, if you ask somebody and they tell you something that sounds a little weird, the next question you ask them is, how much do they lift? And if they say, well, that's not, then just walk away. Yeah, so, yeah, I know. But you know what I mean, though?
Yes,
You got to think about it
So
because, yeah,
I had to hear it.
I would not stretch in between sets. That's just my opinion. Okay. If we get up to a point we only got enough weight for 2 racks, that's cool. We'll just do 2 racks. But just warm up with 3. We got clips. Okay. Just be careful walking that bar out. Yeah, that's pretty good. Good. That looks really good. And he's pretty skinny and not really built to squat. So, I mean, that's, sorry. I'm saying you're just not built, he's not built like me, you know. That's pretty good, yeah. Just try not to shift forward at the bottom. Push back and out. So when you go down, don't let it bend. Yeah, keep it back. Now hit it. And you'll get a lot more spring out of it that way than just dipping forward. Yeah, that's better. There you go, better. The hardest part with heavier weights is they want to bend you a certain way. You got to make it You got to make your body do what it's supposed to do, not what it wants to do. That's kind of difficult to understand. Yeah, pretty good. That's pretty good right there. Just try not to shift onto your toes at the bottom. Push through your heel. Heel. That's it right there. Much better. Yep. Sit it back a little harder, chest up a little higher at the bottom. Chest up, chest up. Yeah, not too bad. Yeah. We do those too. Yeah, those are better racks. Yeah. Good, don't wear yourself out. So remember what we talked about. How many reps do we do for max at most? How many? 5. 5 RM is as high as you go on reps. What's as high as you go for speed? 3. Why? You can't answer it. You can't answer it. Time. Okay, that's the other thing that we get confused with is like time under tension. If I do fast triples, it's going to match about the same amount of time it's going to take me to do a max single. 5-7 seconds. What does that mean? That means the energy system's the same, but the intensity is a little bit different. So it's a different stimulus, same time constraint, equals transfer. Yep. Either. So he's asking me, what do you use for hamstring for hundreds of reps before you squat? I use a band, I use a machine, I'll use heavy ankle weights, I'll use a reverse hyper and do leg curl and reverse, anything I can think of that's different all the time. The real trick is, do you know your weaknesses and are you training them? The next trick is, are you training them with a different stimulus constantly, because the body learns very, very quickly. And if it's like, oh, I'm used to that exercise, I can do 100 of those, no big deal, it's not good anymore. So what I find is an exercise that I use very little weight with, but it burns really bad, and I know my muscles aren't used to that exercise. So I'll use it for a little while until it feels like it gets better, and then I'll change it around. So the worst thing you can do is have a direct system that does not allow you to change the modes constantly, because then your transfer is going to diminish. Good. Through the heel, sit it back, hit. Yeah, that's pretty good. The only thing I see is your eyes are changing where you're looking on the way up. Fix them, and that'll make your balance like a brick. Yeah. Valgus. Goes back out. What's that? Why? Or how to fix it? Yep. Keep pushing out. Yep. And that means that your quadricep at some point in that movement is stronger than your hips. So if you work constantly hip strength and upper hamstring strength, that'll slowly fix in and of itself if you potentiate that in the warm-up and kill it after you get done squatting. Well, are you talking unlimited budget? Because that's the problem. In my opinion, the best thing you can use for that kind of stuff is a back attack, because there's no vertical spine compression. Problem is, there's only a few companies that make it, and they're really expensive. It's basically a Good Morning machine that doesn't push you down. It's like a leverage system, you know. But the ones that a few companies make are very strong. You can load them up pretty well. But if I had to choose between a Good Morning and a stiff-legged deadlift, I would say a stiff-legged deadlift from various heights and deficits. Reason being is you need a bar and weight, you know, and you don't need any spotters. If it goes crazy, you can drop it, right? So it's much more applicable to maybe, I don't know, your gym? No. Yeah, but my point is like you can use a stiff-legged deadlift anywhere. Kettlebells, dumbbells. So I would say as far as being able to use it with minimal equipment, the stiff-legged deadlift is going to overmatch the Good Morning. Good Mornings can be very, very dangerous. Okay, and eventually you'll have very little transfer on Good Mornings to the actual squat. So when I pulled 804, my best Good Morning was 560 for 3. When I pulled 735, I could do 635 for 2 on Good Mornings. So my point is I got away from Good Mornings and my deadlift went up, which sounds crazy, but my point is there's a point of no return where the Good Mornings do not help you anymore. They actually just cause more damage than good. Okay, so but my point is I got really good at Good Mornings. It didn't transfer as much to my deadlift. Once I got away from Good Mornings and did other things, my deadlift went up higher. So I'm not a huge fan of Good Mornings. I think they can be pretty dangerous and not real Not real beneficial after a point, but most people are so weak at them. Push your knees out, stay on your heels. Hit! Good. Yeah, it's perfect. Eyes stay straight, body stay tight. Hit! Knees out. Good. That eye's moved a little bit. Rack it. That's good. So remember, I want to see you get broke on a single. So don't, if you're going to do ones, this is how I warm up. And this is just something, my own personal opinion. I do 5 or 6 with the plate. Then I'll do 2 or 3 with the 2 plates. Then I'll do one with 315, one with 405, one with 495, one with 585, one with 675. Then I'll go to 765, and then 800, and then 850. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. Why? I don't want to fatigue anywhere. I don't want to be tired. I want to be strong. So a lot of people, they'll do like a 5 rep, and then they'll put 20 more pounds on and try to get a single and get crushed, and they'll wonder why they got crushed. How many times do you see that? Even with the pro guys. You can't fix IQ, you know. We get running out of weight. You should have known I was coming, man. I was going to make people do something hard. Any questions while we're messing around with this and you guys are watching? Yeah. Still try to, yes. Yeah, if you watch me from the side, you see it still tilted out. That kind of keeps this hamstring preloaded. Once it starts to turn, it's going to flip into the quad, and all you're going to have is knee jolt out of the hole, no hip. That's just what I've felt and seen my whole life. And it's usually caused by a hamstring weakness or lack of glute activation. I like how people leave when we're getting ready to do the most important part of the thing. Watch people get crushed and show them where their weaknesses are. Because the problem is most people are going to fail the exact same way. I would say probably 70% of the time. And it's all the same weaknesses. Yep, that's good. Yeah, perfect. That's it right there. See how I was trying to tear his feet off the side? See his shoes are almost like buckling on the side? Perfect. You see that? I can literally show you how to squat. I could cut his entire, you could put a black sheet in front of me and only show me his shoes, and I could tell you he's doing it right. Just by looking at his feet pressure, his foot pressure. So remember this, as a good coach, you can literally watch their feet and you can see everything that they're doing. Because if they go to the toe, I can guarantee you their knee's coming forward, right? It's like cake. Good. Why don't you guys wait and go? Yeah, you guys good. That's hardcore right there. I've had to do that before. Push out, hit. Knees out, good. So do we see that little bit of chest tuck at the bottom? So what that's telling you is right when his body gets down to the full bottom, it's time to come up. The first thing it absorbs is his thoracic spine. The thoracic spine starts to absorb the pressure like an accordion, and then it pushes up, but he's already buckled. So what would happen is if we were to say, let's say his max is up another 100 pounds. If his max is up another 100 pounds, that small thoracic buckle is going to put him in what we call a handcuff in a bench, but it's the same thing in a squat. Once it rounds so much that it's over the knee, the only thing that can fire and straighten up is the quad. That looks pretty good right there. Yep. And see, he's built like a brick house to squat, so that helps. But you notice, though, I want you guys to notice how quick he is. He gets in there and gets out of there, right? That's how you squat big weights. You can't be, what do you call it? You got to be confident enough that you're not cautious. It's got to be in and out. You know, it's a reactive thing. There you go. Remember where your eyes are supposed to be, head's supposed to be. Remember, you draw out with the feet, knees out harder, knees out harder, knees out harder. Get it? It's close. So cut it a little bit high, it's right at parallel. But you can tell that right now his core is going to be the main issue once it gets heavier, because once he gets in the hole, you can see the biggest thing to watch upper body is watch their t-shirt. If you start seeing a crease from the chest to the rib, you know that upper back's coming around a little bit. So I always watch the tightness of the t-shirt. So if you were to watch me squat, that shirt's going to look just like this the whole time. You're not going to see any see that slack in the t-shirt, how it's going to get, this is kind of not a good shirt to show. But you watch that, you can watch the t-shirt and the shoes, and it'll tell you everything of what that body's doing. Just one rep. You got it. You got good spotters. There you go. Get your feet set, and then find a spot for your eyes and hold them there. 3, 2, 1, hit! Squeeze, good. See your knee stayed out the whole time, stay tight, perfect. So there's really, other than getting her stronger, there's nothing I can do form-wise to help her. Yeah. Shaking is okay as long as it's not crazy. Like, did anybody see that video I posted with those 115-pound kettlebells with the double band? And it was like, that's too much. That's ridiculous. But it was my fault. I honestly was going to put that on there and go, I'll do 10 reps, with 120-pound kettlebells on the incline bench with like hanging bands and they're bouncing everywhere. It wasn't a good idea. I got 3. But point being is that's way too much instability. So if you see like a little bit, that's okay. But if it's like, if it's crazy, usually that's a core problem. And the shake is just rattling down. But most of the time if you see a shake, it's usually because the transverse abdominis or the obliques are not very strong, and so there's a lot of issues in that regard. That's a quadricep dominance and a hamstring glute weakness. Yes. As long as it's less, if it's less than an inch, so if you see a little bit, that's okay. If you see it like that picture I had in my thing, like this, stop immediately because the ACL is getting ready to blast off. Come on, Big Daddy. You gotta squat big weights if you're gonna get forearm tattoos. There you go, locking in. Push out hard, chest up tall, chest, hit, chest up, good. Yep, perfect. That's perfect. See how explosive it is? Came off his back at the top, but no knee valgus, foot pressure was perfect. So my point is you see the strongest guys that all have the best form. It's not coincidence. He just knows how to use every muscle to squat. It's perfect. Try to get your depth a little bit more. Remember to start with your head up a little higher and your chest up higher. No, nice and easy. Good. Now push out as hard as you can and keep that chest up. 3, 2, 1. Squeeze. Good. There you go. It's all right. You guys see the first flexion was to come in a little, and then the chest started to come over. So we got to get the hamstrings and glutes a little stronger and the upper back a little bit more stable. You can't see that with light weights. But you notice how that was totally fine. Totally safe. If you don't have that type of equipment, do like what I said. Set up the adjustment chains. You got 2 big chains right next to you. You get down in there, it's like, oh, I can't get it. Just set it right back down the chain, walk out from underneath it. That's how I had to do it in college because I had no spotters. Going to master's degree, I get out of class at 7:30. I have to go get my squats in. Nobody's in the weight room. I got to squat 700 for 2 reps. I put the adjustment chains in. I got 2 spotters on each side. I'm fine. Come on, Big Daddy. Push out. 3, 2, 1. Yep. Squeeze. Good. Not bad. So his knees stayed a little vertical, but you started losing your outward pressure. So as he got heavier, you could see that the quadricep was starting to overpower a little bit. So if we go heavier and heavier, he would come more and more forward. So that's all the time we got today. But yeah, head was better.